Okay, here's question 26 on the foundation paper. You need to read through this systematically. There's a lot of information here, right? So read through it and take your time. Question says there are 300 milliliters of medicine in a bottle. It's even written up there, 300 ml in the bottle. Mary has to take 2 5-milliliter spoonfuls of medicine twice a day. So twice a day she has to take 2 5-ml spoonfuls. Mary has to take the medicine until the bottle is empty. So she has to use up all 300 ml of medicine in the bottle. The question wants to know how many days does Mary have to take the medicine for? So she has to take the medicine until the bottle's empty. And what is she doing? She's taking 2 5-milliliters of medicines, 5-milliliter spoonfuls of medicine. So 2 5-milliliter spoonfuls of medicine twice a day. So 2 times 5 is 10. So each time she takes 10 milliliters altogether. But she does that twice a day. And so every day she's doing 2 times 5, which is 10, times 2, which is 20 milliliters every day. So the question wants to know how many days does she take to use up the whole bottle. So I want to know what the bottle contains 300 ml. So I want to know how many times 20 goes into that. So she takes 20 ml every day. The bottle contains 300 ml. What you could do is, if you can't do that division, you could count up in 20s to work out how many days she takes. Now I know that 5 lots of 20 is 100. So in 5 days she'll use 100 ml. How many days would she take to use 300 ml? That's going to be 15 days altogether. So it's 15 days altogether. Our last bit of the division, 300 divided by 20. There's several ways you could do that. 300 divided by 20. You could break that down in that way. 20 into 3 cannot. 20 into 30 is 1. And what's the remainder there? It's 10. So if I put a little 10 up there, you can't hardly make it out, but that turns into 100. 20 into 100 is 5. So that's how I could get my 15. Or alternatively, you could do 300 divided by 20. You could cancel out those 2 zeros, which leaves you 30 divided by 2. And 30 divided by 2, that's 15. So whichever method you find the easiest, right? The hardest part of that question is doing that division that I showed just now, and the second hardest part is actually working out what you need to do. And I think a lot of people will get this bit, right? Will get the fact that every day she takes 20 milliliters. So you need to just break it down into smaller chunks. Part B of the question. There's again a fair bit to this. Need to read it through carefully, underline or highlight the key words. You can work out the amount of medicine, C, to give to a child using this formula. Right, so they've given you a formula, there are a couple of letters in there. Let's see what the letters mean. M is the age of the child in months. A is an adult dose in milliliters. Okay, so there's my formula. M times A, that's MA, divide that by 150, and that gives me C, which is the amount of medicine to give a child. A child is 30 months old, and the adult dose is 40 ml. Work out the amount of medicine, to give to the child. So, if we think about what the letters mean, M is the age of the child in months. We've told that the age of the child in months is 30 months. A is an adult dose, so A is going to be 40. This is called substitution. We're going to replace the letters with these numbers and work out how much medicine the child should get. So C is equal to M, which is 30, times A, which is 40, and I'm going to divide all of that by 150, and that comes straight from the formula there. If we work up this, 30 times 40, you should be able to do that. 3 times 4 is 12, 2 zeros. I'm going to divide that by 150. Now, if you've done all of this up to this point, you're going to get at least 1 mark in the question. I think a lot of people find the division aspect of this difficult. So we could break it down. We could break it down into bits, or you could think about how you could count up in 150s to work out your overall answer. But what I'd be inclined to do, just as I showed earlier, is cancel a 0 from each of these. You only cancel the zeros at the very end. That's effectively dividing by 10. You're dividing each of these by 10. So what I've got is 120 divided by 15. Now I could go away and use the bust-up method for this. 120 divided by 15. 15 into 12 cannot. 15 into 120, well, that's the same problem that I started with. So that's quite challenging in its own way. What I could do is start looking at this or treating this as a fraction, right? Treat this as a fraction. What number could go into both of these? What number could go into 15 and 120? Well, they both end, one ends in 5, one ends in 0. So that means 5 could go into them. 5 could go into 15 3 times. How many times does 5 go into 120? If you're ever stuck with this, start thinking about it as money. How many 5p's in £1.20? Well, I know there are 25p's in a pound, and 4 5p's make 20p, right? So how many 5's in 120? 24. And what's 24 divided by 3? 24 divided by 3 is 8. So in this case, the answer to this question is 8 milliliters. Now, this question is really important that you break it down into simple steps. Think about what you're doing at each stage and try to break it down into simple steps. One way I've seen people do this last bit of dividing in both of these cases is they write down several lots of either 15 or 150 and add them up as they go along, trying to get as close to or working their way up to either 1,200 or, as I've done it here, simplified it to 120. So think about these. This is a harder part, but it's the second to last question in the paper. It's not impossible. It is pretty straightforward, and it's easy to get at least 1 mark in this last part here. Overall, this is a pretty straightforward question which you could actually score quite high in. Make sure you get the marks.